Hey, and welcome to Board with Life News for February 4th. Today I'm going to talk about two expansions coming from AEG, a reprint of Stronghold, Unpub 5, Wave 1 of Star Wars Armada, as well as the Kickstarter for Pretense. Let's get to it. Hey, I'm Chris. Welcome to Board with Life News. As far as Board with Life News goes, we have a new podcast coming out tomorrow. It's the next episode in our Dungeons & Dragons playthrough, The Lost Mines of Phandelver. We are having a great time with it. We really enjoy doing it. It seems like you guys are really liking it. I'd encourage you to go check that out. There's a link in the description if you haven't already, because you think maybe you don't like Dungeons & Dragons, you don't know about it. We have some new people playing in the group, so it's a great introduction to it. We've turned a couple of people onto it, and that's really cool. It's also, I think, pretty funny. I laugh at it a lot, which is awkward. Along with the podcast, we are soon going to be doing a mailbag version of the podcast where all the players are going to sit down and answer your questions. So if you have a question for Donald, our GM, or basically anybody about our characters, you can find out more than you ever wanted to know about Elfman 1986. Go ahead and tweet that at us at I'm Bored with Life, and we'll definitely talk about it. And now, a little bit of a shameless self-promotion thing for me. It doesn't really have to do with Bored with Life, aside from the fact that I'm doing it, and it has to do with games, but it's certainly not a Bored with Life thing. But I am competing in the DFW Nerd Night game design competition. We were given a box of components from Panda Games and 3 weeks to design a game using only those components. I am vlogging about that design experience on my own personal channel, which I'll link to right here. And you should go check that out if you have any interest in game design or anything like that. I'm a relatively new game designer, so I'm sure I will make some mistakes that you can learn from. And that's good for everybody. All right, now on to board game news. AEG has announced upcoming expansions for Lost Legacy as well as Doomtown Reloaded. Lost Legacy is going to have an expansion entitled Lost Legacy, Second Chronicles, Vorpal Sword, and White Gold Spire. That's right. Lost Legacy, Second Chronicles, Vorpal Sword, and White Gold Spire. Because apparently someone had a stroke while they were coming up with the title of this game. It's very long, but whatever. This is going to have two different sets of 16 cards that can be played independently or combined with each other. You can also combine it with any other Lost Legacy set. This is kind of like Love Letter, where you get to put in a bunch of random cards, a la One Night Ultimate Werewolf or any of that kind of thing. So it's good if you like that sort of expandable type game. The second expansion coming from AEG is for Doomtown Reloaded, and it's entitled Faith and Fear. This is a living card game. Well, I guess it's technically not a living card game, it's an expandable card game because Fantasy Flight owns a copyright on living card game title, but whatever, I'm calling it an LCG because damn the man. This is going to have 148 new cards, including new outfit cards for each faction. It's going to have an expanded story sheet and new sample decks for each faction. Doomtown Reloaded is a very creative and interesting game, so if you like that, I'm sure you'll definitely want to check this out. A game from 2009, Stronghold, is getting a second edition, and it's actually coming out from a different publisher. Fittingly, Stronghold Games is publishing this now, in conjunction with Portal that initially published it. It's going to have streamlined rules, shortened gameplay, improved components, and a bigger board with new artwork. So if you're a Stronghold fan, you'll definitely want to check this one out. Unpub 5 is this coming weekend at the Baltimore Convention Center. So if you live in or around Baltimore, you definitely want to try to make it. It's going to be free for you, which is super rad to go to a convention for free. Unpub is the largest board game design competition in the US. It's going to have more than 80 different game designers that are all bringing prototypes of new games that you can play test for absolutely free. Everything's free if you're a player. So you can test some brand new designs. You can kind of look behind the curtain and see how the sausage is made, that kind of thing. It's a really cool organization. Lots of new designers get their start there and wind up getting published. Definitely an interesting thing that you should definitely go check out if you are in the area. Fantasy Flight has decided to continue printing money and has announced Wave 1 for Star Wars Armada. This is the first set of expansion ships for their new game Star Wars Armada that is sort of like Star Wars X-Wing, but on a bigger scale, so it's kind of like giant battles instead of tiny little dogfight battles. This is going to have 3 new capital starships of the Rebellion, the CR-90 Corellian Corvette, the Nebulon B-class frigate, and the Assault Frigate Mark II, which is great because a lot of people are walking around with that Assault Frigate Mark I. That's not going to get the ladies. The ladies want the Mark II. Yeah. Not creepy or weird. I wonder how low my voice can go. And the Kickstarter this week is for a game called Pretense, a game night social meta game. This is a game of hidden roles that takes place during a normal game night. So basically, at the beginning of the game night, you give everybody a card, and the card is going to have them do different things in order to get other people's cards, which will score them victory points at the end of the night. For example, you could be the glutton, and you need someone to hand you food, and if they do that, you get their card. Or maybe you're the bookworm, and you have to have someone hand you a rule book. So everybody's trying to play these little mini games while you're trying to convince your friends to do things without them knowing, because if they guess it, then you get knocked out of the game. But if they guess wrong, then they got knocked out of the game and you take their role. So it's a very creative idea, it's a very cool idea, and it's very cheap. It's only $6 right now on Kickstarter, so if that interests you, back it. Alright, that's the news for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you know the drill, you watch every week. Anyways, this week's question comes from @5MinuteGamer via Twitter, and they ask, how often do you back games on Kickstarter, and what do you think about the Exploding Kittens project? The first part of that question, I checked, and I have backed 24 games on Kickstarter in the past 2 years, so about once a month, as long as you're including role-playing games in that. I back about 1 game a month, which seems like too much knowing my budget, so don't tell my fiance, because she'd get mad at me. Anyways, and as far as Exploding Kittens, for those of you who somehow don't know, this is a card game with artwork by the guy who does The Oatmeal, the popular online comic, and I actually checked right before I did this video, and the Kickstarter is up to $5.2 gajillion, which they had to invent new increments of measuring money, because now money's just like a far concept to what this amount is. It's not a quantifiable, like your human brain can't understand it, or else you would just turn into a puddle of ooze. I have no problem with this Kickstarter. Stuff that I know most people that are backing it because they love The Oatmeal, which is great. It's a great online comic. I agree the game does not look very good, but, you know, a lot of people's favorite games aren't good. Like, the majority of people, because we're in a very small hobby where we actually play games that are good and interesting, but most people, they don't play good games. They just play crappy games, and they don't know any better. And those games are better than no games. So maybe it'll turn some people on to the hobby. It's certainly not going to turn anybody off to the hobby. And you know what? Licensed stuff makes more money. Like, there's a reason that Transformers makes more money than movies I love, and things of that nature. And even when it's good, like some of the Marvel movies, they still make more money. So it makes sense that having a license for your game, such as The Oatmeal, it would make more money. It's not going to hurt the hobby at all. It can only help the hobby. I don't have any problem with it. Yeah, there's some jealousy where you go like, how come my good game doesn't make that much money? But there's a simple answer. It's because you didn't have the guy from The Oatmeal do the artwork for your game. Maybe think about that if you're trying to make a lot of money on a game. But, yeah, so I'm not backing it because I don't want a game that's not any fun. But if people want to give their money to that, then they can give their money to that, and I have no problem. All right, that's the news for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.